Thank you all for making the trek out this morning. Appreciate it. It's never fun talking to an empty room, and we seem to have solved that problem. We've got a great panelist here. All 6 of the stars showed up. The one other one, whatever. I'm going to have our panelists take 30 to 90 seconds to introduce yourself and what you do, and then we're going to jump right in. So, Michael, you want to start?
So, Mike Alexander, I'm with IBM. I'm a distinguished engineer within our telco industry. And I deal with our media and entertainment organizations as well. So the discussion around over the top and what we do from standpoint of technical solutions to improve the quality of the delivery of the over the top, what we have within our soft layer cloud data centers, which are global, in moving the content closer to the subscribers. And from a carrier standpoint, because I deal on the telco side, I see the impact of the over-the-top. So one of the examples was for a European carrier. We were looking at the quality of delivery of over-the-top, and we found that what was happening for the over-the-top play was that with the Google ad insertions, they were doing HTTP ad insertions, which basically created a monster download, which frustrated the end customer to the point that they basically canceled the download. So it wasn't the video that was causing the problem. It was actually the ad insertions in the pre and post rolls for the content that was coming down. So we look at all those types of attributes associated with video and what can be done with real-time ad insertions and the quality of the services all the way to the end customers.
Perfect. Thank you. Jeff?
Sure. Jeffrey Thompson. I am a partner in 4Screen Partners, which is a production house that actually is much more than a production house. We produce premium content across multiple screen platforms, linear, nonlinear, OTT, mobile, tablet, and we're using this disrupted environment to create an opportunity to drive efficiency as producers and buyers of content really have to focus on not just the creativity, but how to get that content deployed efficiently across multiple screens in multiple territories.
Thank you.
Hey, Tamir Jokai from Magisto. Magisto is, most people really see us as an app, and that's where we're most popular. We've got almost 50 million users globally and making 10 million videos a month. But really what powers the app is the world's first artificial intelligence sort of black box that can edit video infinitely scalably and at real time. So we've recreated the mind of a human video editor inside of, an AI. And that's what powers the app. That's what powers our brand solution that we're starting to offer now. That's what powers, a lot of our real-time sort of streaming offerings that we're offering. So at this point now, we're launching, taking the core technology and moving away from our immensely successful app and starting to apply that AI towards auto editing of live streaming, towards branded campaigns. So it's a really brave new world in AI, as we all know, and we're sort of leading the forefront of artificial intelligence video editing.
Hi, I'm Bernie Strom. I'm chairman and CEO of a company called WebTuner. We've developed an entertainment platform for the living room that will replicate on PCs, tablets, and phones. We invented the next generation set-top box, which is actually a plug-in computer. That's a very powerful device. It's a smart device next to the TV, so it lets us render video in 60 frames a second. We invented a new remote that's 7 buttons with a full QWERTY keyboard on the back because we have very intense search capabilities. So that being said, we invented great and very pretty hardware, but we're a software company, and the platform consists of the hardware and then a new generation guide that integrates all of the world's content, live VOD, internet, Stanford streaming courses, ethnic, games, whatever. And it has personalization, search, and recommendation, an audience measurement system that's real-time 100% data, and an advertising platform that's dynamic, integrated, and transaction-enabled, and can be hyper-targeted, even hyper-local targeted.
Thank you.
Hi, Miguel Santos. Sorry, my voice is really low. It's early morning. I'm the general manager of Mixed TV. We didn't invent anything like that, but we're an Asian American cable network distributed in over 15 million households, and we're also available on OTT such as Roku, Samsung Smart TVs, and Sony.
Thank you.
My name is Wilson Kriegel. I'm Chief Revenue Officer of a company called PixArt. PixArt is the largest photo and art creative software on mobile with over 170 million organic installs, 50 million monthly active users, 50 million daily sessions. We enable for over 4 million created images, whether they're photos, edited images, art, drawings, graphic design on mobile to be shared every day, either within our community or through social networks.
Thank you. So the big news in this space was last week. HBO announced they'll be going over the top direct to the consumer. CBS actually launched. What does that mean? Is it have the floodgates opened? Is it the bundle is cut and we're all going to be signing up for our own networks that we want, or is it all a whole lot of nothing? Thoughts, anyone?
For me, I'm jumping at this one because it's a whole lot of everything. This is a huge shift, and I've been saying it well before CBS and well before HBO, and most people in this business have been saying it. You got to give ABC and Dish some credit for back in January, being sort of the first to say we're going to create an over-the-top service and cannibalize our own business. Not ABC's not saying they're going to cannibalize their own business, but certainly Dish was saying that they wanted to have an OTT solution delivered directly to consumers across internet only without having to buy a significant bundle. Instead of 100 channels, maybe it's 30 or 20. We've been watching as this has gone down, and it's quite powerful. But let's give credit to Crackle. Let's give credit to Crunchyroll. Let's give credit to a ton of other early startup companies that have now either been acquired or otherwise, Machinima and others that have been sort of pioneering this space. And now what we're finding is the traditionals are beginning to get into this business because their audiences and eyeballs are moving to this business and over these platforms.
Thank you, Jeff. Bernie, look like
Yeah,
you
well,
wanted to say something?
I always say the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So now we've seen the chain begin to pull apart. I think it has great significance for the industry and for the incumbents. They're very challenged. Last year was the first year that quarter over quarter they lost subscribers ever since launch. And so that's what's making them sit up and pay attention. Plus you have the disruptors like Google, Apple TV, Yahoo to some extent, and Xbox and Sony. And they have to now find a way to play or die.
It's interesting. A number of years ago, Stars went over the top, and the pay TV operators, and particularly Dish, who I used to work for, hated that and really put the screws to them because of it. And this is public. I'm not talking out of turn. Now, again, HBO, CBS, those are big brands, right? Dish or Direct or Comcast cannot say to them, I don't like what you're doing. I'm going to drop you. They just can't.
Time Warner tried, and look what happened to
Right,
them.
exactly. So they've got the clout to do it, but a smaller network doesn't have that clout. And Miguel, maybe you can talk about this because just to put you on the spot for a moment, you, if I understand correctly, are on a number of MVPDs and you go over the top. What do they say to you about that? Are they upset that I can get you on Roku for free?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously for small networks, we don't have that leverage that HBO has or CBS. They're okay with over-the-top content, provided that it doesn't show too much of the network. So we still have to, place priority on our linear channel. So it's really, but the beauty of over-the-top is that we're still being distributed a little wider than we would if we stuck to just linear. So I think it's a game changer with having more options, and I'm actually excited seeing that HBO and CBS are actually doing OTT direct to the consumers, because it also makes the cable systems rethink their strategy of all or nothing.
I personally don't think it's cannibalization necessarily in that it's the end all and be all. I mean, people still pay for dial-up on AOL. I mean, this is decades later. It's a multi-billion-dollar. It's actually their most profitable business today. I think to me, it's the beginning of just assessing where the next billion potential consumers are ultimately going to be and how you make that a model that is sustainable. But if you look at mass market America, which is 100+ million household, they're still paying their cable bill. I mean, the average American is not suddenly going, broadband, digital, capturing whatever. Now on the East Coast and the West Coast, which is also applies to the ad media budget, but yeah, you've got some migration there, but it's about the use case of how they're going about, consuming what content it is and what they're paying for. A lot of people are in the train, or in the plane, they want to consume content. Not giving it to them doesn't make them be able to watch the live show when they're missing it. So is it complementary? Is it cannibalization? I don't think anybody really knows at this point, but if you look, there's WhatsApp, there's Viber, there's Skype, and people are still paying their full bills, right? So again, I think if you look at consumer behavior and where content and how people are pivoting towards content consumption, it's a little bit early to say, it's the end all and be all and that's the end of everything. I don't think that's the case because consumers take a very long time to migrate, especially the mass market. Twitch TV, which is the people watching, sports that just sold for $1 billion to Amazon 3 years ago didn't exist. The EAs of the world would never tolerate, their content to be broadcast. But live sports and esports has been going on for a decade. It takes a long time for these things to take place. So again, I don't know how many people are actually not calling through their data plan today in this particular room, but I bet you not half of them are using WhatsApp or like Viber or Skype to make free calls or free text, and they're still using their data plans and their regular messaging. And we're supposed to be a savvy crowd here. So trickle that down to the food chain of the rest of America, and you're a decade away from that cannibalization or that complete pivot. And it took a long time for music, and music was late to the party. And I think for the major shows to take a head start on that, that's a very important step because again, Twitch TV and other, I would say Machinima and other non-AAA content or more user-generated like environment or, packaged content, have made their stride. And Disney just bought, a very large YouTube channel maker. And I think, but listen, my mom is not watching, YouTube, right? And she's still watching her shows. So I think, again, it's about more of the demographic and the use cases and ultimately over time how that use case has become the standard, but today it is not.
I just wanted a quick note on that I end up paying $20 a month to Skype because my cell phone reception doesn't work. Does that count? Does that count? Sorry.
I just want to add that, in the spirit of in the spirit of digital Hollywood, I would respectfully say that there's some pieces of what you're saying that I absolutely agree with, especially the fact that it's early. But let's be clear, 44% of consumers, of Americans in the U.S. had an over-the-top subscription last year. That grew to 55% in 1 year. Anybody who's in programming that doesn't realize the power of and the fact that, when you watch kids and their consumption patterns now, that if you go to any college dorm these days, an 18-year-old isn't getting Comcast, whether I like it or not. I came out of ABC and Disney, so I'm a fan of traditional companies, it's profitable businesses. But the fact is, if you go to any college dorm, an 18-year-old is getting Netflix and Amazon, maybe Hulu Plus, and calling it a day. And those patterns were the same patterns for landline, right? Same patterns. Let's talk about digital cameras and how it disrupted what used to be a very profitable processing business. So where we're going is, I don't think that the purpose of this panel will be for us to beat up anything on the traditional, because we realize there's great content opportunities everywhere. What I would say from the platform that I'm in is that I'm with the last two companies I've been with have been very small companies. I came out of Disney and Condé Nast, huge, big brands. And I went to a little company called Shout Factory that launched the James Brown channel. We launched Scream Factory TV, over the top. We were able to compete with big companies as a little tiny startup. And I think in the spirit of digital Hollywood, one of the things that we're able to do is we're able to say, wow, we can bring a lot more diversity of content offerings directly to consumers in a very profitable way, and don't need a television audience necessarily to make our numbers and to make our margins. And so, and we look at internationally, there's even more opportunity. So I would say that, like, you know, I think all of us have been waiting for, okay, what is the cost of content? How does the cost of premium content, how is it driven down? How are these ecosystems becoming more efficient? How do we monetize them? And in the last 3 years, so many answers have been made that you're seeing a ton of not just companies, but a ton of startups and a ton of traditionals jumping into this business. I think we're going to look back and say the last 2 years was truly transformational in this business.
Yeah, I think you're seeing the acceleration. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it's not going to be 10 years. It's happening so fast now, and change is happening fast. I think it's going to be probably over the next 5 years that you really see change. And one of the things we're doing is we're working with anybody who wants to be a virtual cable company, so we could direct distribute your content or anybody's content to anybody. But we're talking to cable and satellite people because they have to transition. And they're starting to recognize that, and they're recognizing it in a big way. And we've come up with solutions for them to transition it. What I like to tell them is we allow them to do disruptive evolution rather than just being revolutioned out of business. And there are people now challenging their models. The Googles, the internet, I call them the internet guys, who could also use our product. But the thing is, there's a very big audience there, and the television audience is very big and it's fragmented. What we worry about are the 18 to 34 cord nevers, and that's what the industry worries about. But I also worry about the over 50s, because they're being left behind in the dust by all of the newer, for the most part.
Hey, wait a
For
minute.
all of the newer
The
technologies.
50 is a new 40, just, you know, to speak for a certain
Trust
number
me,
of
I
people.
know, I know. But the thing is,
Not dead yet.
no, but they're a very large audience, and they have two things that television viewers like: time and money. So they're a big audience, and you can't ignore that, which is why we still have a volume up, volume down, change channel button on this remote, because you can still watch that way if you want to. But then we have all of the geek things like search, recommendation, that ultimately even the over 50s will learn, because we're so intuitive. But the thing is, you cannot forget that big audience. It's a huge television audience, and it isn't an audience that does apps, which is why we like to say the killer app for television is watching television.
So there's, again, thinking about HBO and CBS, we're going to beat this dead horse till it's completely dead. You know, there's another way of looking at it, which is, you may recall about a year ago, WWE, the wrestling group, they launched their own subscription service. Lots of hoopla, big thing. Again, big brand. You know, most companies couldn't, most paid TV operators couldn't say, we're not going to carry you anymore, though Dish tried and didn't really work. And then they went on for a while, and what happened? Wall Street spanked them, right? They didn't hit the numbers, and their stock got hit hard. We're going to see that happen here?
Well, there's a difference, you know, not to, you know, the difference. Those direct-to-channel networks work when you have deep affinity, deep engagement, and where there's other ways to get marketing out. When you look at HBO and CBS and ABC and NBC, you know, if you look at all of their on-air broadcasts, you know, 40% of time is dedicated to promoting their own shows. So so what happens over time, if you have the Glenn Beck channel, the James, whatever it is, whatever that affinity, early on they have a tremendous amount of affinity, but over time they lose sort of the noise level. So I think that in some case, if you're talking to a very young audience, some of that noise level is picked up by social engagement. They over-index social, they over-index viral, so that, you know, they get their news differently. But if it's a traditional audience, it's harder to get that noise and to promote to those channels. Now, when you talk about HBO and CBS and ABC's Watch apps and all these others that are really heavily branded, remember, they're promoting them.
Yeah.
So they will be successful, right?
So what was the most popular show on cable last year? Rizzoli and Isles, right? Rizzoli and Isles. Does anybody in this like, nobody's talking about Rizzoli and Isles, right?
We are now.
Well, we're talking about it now, but when I heard that number, I was like, all I heard last year was, I heard Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I was hearing about like, what's the Kevin Spacey one?
House of
House of Cards. I know, I love it, but that's more my brain and less about Kevin Spacey. No, but what's funny is the disconnect, the often wide disconnect between the shows that people are actually watching and the shows that people are talking about, right? And I think when we think about this strategically, and you think about content that you're coming to market with, if you've got Rizzoli, you're good. You're good to go as is. You've got a huge audience. But if you got a show that people are talking about a lot, but isn't actually hitting that many eyeballs, right?
Into the mic.
Sorry. If you got a show that people are talking about a lot, but that aren't hitting that many eyeballs, then it makes all the sense in the world to unbundle. Makes all the sense in the world to offer that a la carte. If it's getting a lot of hype and it's touching an audience, even if it's small, it's touching an audience in a very, very powerful way. It makes all the sense in the world. So that's the first thing is I just want to sort of introduce into here the concept that the shows that people are watching and the shows that people are talking about are often two completely separate groups with much less overlap than
So
you
this
think
is the Rizzoli and Isles theorem.
the Rizzoli and Isles theorem.
No, actually, it's probably the over 50 audience theorem.
Okay,
And
all
it's
right.
his group is
Easy
talking
on
about
the poor people.
Game of Thrones
Well, kick 'em when
and
they're down.
others, and the other audience is watching Rizzoli and Isles. That was a surprise to me.
So I want to change topic a little bit. And Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot. All right. So now we're in the brave new world. Everything is going over the top. It's, we're linking arms and singing Kumbaya. Can the infrastructure support it? How do we get there? How does it actually happen?
Yeah, so I mean, some of this is coming about because the technology behind the actual play and delivery of this type of over-the-top content has progressed to the point where you don't have to prepare the content for formatting to the special devices. You don't have to introduce the advertisements into the content. You can do all this on a real-time dynamic basis. So it's part of that infrastructure that's making the over-the-top play capable of reaching and being customized to the specific audience and that customer, that unique customer out there.
Hey. Oh, cool, man. I'm glad you can make it.
Sorry.
No, it's no
It
problem.
was a traffic jam out front. It's like no parking. They were all.
Jason Berger, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give a hand.
Somebody had a flat tire on the front, so it's a little aggressive out there.
The other part of it is the capability for an over-the-top to be able to give a delivery of a quality service to that end customer as well. Because previously it was walled garden and you basically had to have dedicated network capabilities to that customer to be able to not have starts and stops of the play, long delays in the startup of the video content. Those again there's technology solutions that have come about in the last couple of years that gave you that capability of adding that into the play capability of these over-the-top services. So the infrastructure behind this cloud and the cloud capabilities of being able to push that content, closer to the geolocations, be it in Asia or be it in South America or various other demographic areas, gives us the capability of not having to be constrained with all of this pre-production, formatting and capabilities that have restricted the over-the-top play.
Yeah, and other things are in play. For example, coming very soon is HLS 285, which will cut in half bandwidth requirements. It'll double the throughput, just with better compression and other technologies. And so I totally agree with you. In one of these constraints always still will be right now, especially in the U.S., bandwidth, because anytime you go out of the U.S., if you go to Australia, every citizen gets 100 up and 100 down. So does New Zealand, and we barely average the average in the U.S. is 10 megabits per second. So you have to find a way to deal with that. And one of the reasons we have a smart device next to the TV is because we could write to the to the chip and really be efficient. But it's still an issue in the US and we have to increase bandwidth.
Thank you.
Just to add numbers to this, I think Super Bowl, January, right? I think the record number of streams was 2.1 million, record number.
Is that concurrent?
Concurrent streams, right? And so 2.1 million, and how many? There was a record Super Bowl, and what are we talking about? 90 million, 100 million, some god awful number, right? So we're really talking about
those 50-year-olds weren't streaming.
So you're really talking about, in the grand scheme of things, we're not ready to have scale. The ecosystem is scaling, but we're not there yet. But the fact is, consumer behavior is going there. So everybody's investing in this space. And when I say this, everybody in distribution is investing in this space. The only other thing I would add on this one is let's go to the monetization front, because that's what we're all, everyone's looking at how to monetize, how do we make some, how do we drive, early on where we're all talking about YouTube and how many great scalable eyeballs we could get, but nobody was making really significant money in a traditional sense. Well, now with BrightRoll, with Live Rail, with Tremor, with so many engines of ability to take that content and seamlessly be able to monetize it. We haven't talked yet about dynamic ad inserts and other types of monetization systems that get higher CPMs. But what we're finding is that there's going to be better margin based upon CPM, not just at on shows that are traditional shows that are sold in a professional, traditional sense, but even for the little guys, right? All of those new content players that are coming into the market, they will have a much easier, seamless way of interjecting premium advertising at a high CPM directly targeted at a particular audience into the marketplace, which means if their cost of content is substantially lower, and they can get tremendously higher CPMs than they're getting now, all of a sudden there's your margin. So I think that we're all playing in this delta, and there's going to be an arbitrage in there, and all of us are betting on where it is.
Cool. Jason, if I understand correctly, I think you're in the content business, correct?
Yeah, so we create a lot of content for everybody from traditional linear platforms like television and film, but also do a lot in the branded and commercial space. And then kind of our sweet spot is really in the digital space. So a lot of bigger digital content series like the shows that you'd see on Yahoo, AOL, and at the time, all of the YouTube platforms that were paid YouTube channels, we would produce content for them.
And what are you guys seeing in terms of usage and as more Hollywood content, HBO, CBS, that stuff migrates to the web? Are you seeing more or less usage of, I think you're doing more shorter form, is that correct?
Both, really. I mean, it's both long and short form. I mean, we probably produce more, I think, digital content than most folks out there. Not talking about like the Maker and the awesomeness and full screen, but like a lot of our show, like we have like 8 shows on Yahoo. And they range from 3 to 5 minutes, and then another show that is on there is now over at the CW in a half-hour format. And
how do you make money on this? Do you license? Do they pay a license fee, or is it a rev
depends.
share?
I mean, that's a really good question. It depends. I mean, yeah. Well, obviously on the YouTube platforms, you're not going to make as much money on the YouTube platforms, and that's just a given. I mean, I think
even with their humongous audience, double everybody else.
I mean, YouTube's taking half of your money. And that just is the nature of the beast. So I think
that traffic, though, right? I mean, you're getting half of gigantic amounts versus 80-70% of a teeny amount.
Yeah, I think that the traffic that we get on shows that we have on Yahoo get more traffic than they do on YouTube.
Interesting.
Because of the ability to advertise on the front page and things like that, right? And I think that a lot of those YouTube channels and you saw it from last year, a lot of those YouTube channels that were paid channels are now no longer, because they're just, I mean, they can't sustain a business.
You couldn't find it,
no,
even if you wanted to watch it.
First, you couldn't find it, so there's no marketing for it, right? And I think that now I think AOL and Yahoo and some of those other platforms are starting to figure out that you have to still market these things. You know, a lot of the shows that we would do that are on the front page would do about 1 million, 2 million views a week.
Wow.
Right, per show, 3-5 minutes. So which is pretty good. Now, in terms of YouTube, like unless you're gonna somehow piggyback like a Shane Dawson or Lucas Cruikshank or some, you know, big YouTube influencer, and you're just doing straight kind of vlogging or something like that, it's pretty tough to even break that 100,000 view those impressions. So if you have something that's like in the 50 to 100,000 views, it's pretty good per episode, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that you know it's what we're gonna see is people are gonna there has to be a change in that marketplace.
In the YouTube?
Yeah, there has to be some. I mean, because what'll happen eventually, what it's already starting to do, is all those businesses that are all those businesses that were built on YouTube are gonna just get off YouTube. I mean, that's just they have to. I mean, they can't sustain that amount of overhead with that little amount of income.
So did
net revenue? Excuse me, net revenue, not
Right.
gross, but net.
And so was Disney smart or not?
I do
so
think they're smart. I mean, look,
in terms of buying, you know, Maker, which is wholly dependent
I
on
think
YouTube.
they're very smart. I mean, I think look, they're going to use it to just to get eyeballs instead of making it about, hey, we're gonna this is gonna be a business that we're gonna make money from. Let's just use this business to drive eyeballs, use it as a marketing strategy, and to kind of build on some sort of brand equity and brand identity that Maker already has. Let's try and get this other demographic that we've been trying to get into, or this existing demographic that we already have ties into. Let's bring people even further into the fold, rather than just, you know, kind of it being used for stuff that's outside of that. It being used for an actual business.
Thank you.
You know?
But if you look,
What's
if you,
interesting about, sorry, I just wanted, while he was talking about it, one of the interesting about us, and part of the reason we're starting to do native advertising, is when you look at UGC, every single channel that we have inside of Magisto gets 500,000 views a month, right? And you know, some of them, the more popular ones, are getting millions, right?
Yep.
And so people, and they're thematic, right? Now a lot of people will you know, diss UGC, but at the end of the day, people watch their friends'
Absolutely.
content. They watch it,
That's true.
and they watch it all the way through to the end, right? And the content is usually timed. It's usually web optimized. It's usually less than 2 minutes. A lot of times it's less than 1 minute, right? So you're commanding eyeballs. You've got a place to put native social advertising against. And it's 30% of the conversation today. 30% of every piece of content that we're laying our eyes on was created by a non-professional user for a non-professional audience. Now, that's not TV and print. Plus digital. So clearly those are still the kings of the kingdom, right? But 30% of the conversation is happening in this new medium. And if you can slip some advertising, right, you're commanding millions and millions of eyeballs. So I think part of the reason we even belong on this panel is because we're talking about how we can command eyeballs.
So tell me about that, because when I think of your company, I think of the video editing app, right? But now you just mentioned channels.
Yeah. So basically, when you use Magisto, I mean, this is going to sound like all pitchiness aside. When you use Magisto, you use a theme. So you don't edit, we edit for you. So you upload all your content, you tell us it was a wedding. Okay, great. You choose the wedding theme. And then of course we have a channel now of all wedding themed videos, right? But
So
that channel doesn't get.
So my wedding video is now public to the world.
If you choose it to be public,
Okay.
you'd be surprised. You'd be stunned how many people choose it to be public, right?
I wouldn't be.
So, but you know what's funny is the average view in our entire ecosystem gets five views,
5 views.
right? So we're not
My
talking
mother,
about,
my father, my
Yeah.
2 brothers, and some random person.
it's literally the people who give about you. That's your views, right? And if you have 500 friends, I can tell you only 5 of them care about you, because only 5 of them will actually watch.
all my Facebook friends.
No, it's actually
they don't
stunningly
care?
true. When you think about it, it actually is a scary reflection of the world, where it's that interested coworker who actually cares about you and sees you every day.
The stalker,
It's
basically.
yeah. And so clearly that's an average number. But what's interesting is we just got 1 million videos created for Zappos. 1 million happiness videos were created for Zappos that got 5 million views.
Wait, these are customers of Zappos?
So Zappos sponsored a theme
Right.
called Happiness. It had their brand logo all over it. 1 million people created a video that had happiness video. They all had the choice to take the branding off. They did. They shared it through. 5 million free downstream views. We didn't pay additional media spend, right? So we got them 6 million views of super premium video. And when I say super premium, I don't mean the quality of the production. What I mean super video is the quality of the engagement. It was 100% contextualized, meaning you created, self-selected to create a baby video. You sent it to your friend, and because it came from a friend, that person was much more engaged than a pre-roll ad. So we're basically out there hawking 6 million super premium views at 1/18 of the cost of what you're running premium.
All right, so I create my wedding baby video. I
Wedding baby.
acknowledge that you can share it with
Shotgun
the world.
wedding video?
It's, you know, my baby video Zappos video, my baby wedding Zappos video is up there. You're putting a pre-roll in front of it?
No, so what we do is we do contextual, like sort of embedded native. So instead of saying we're just running a pre-roll, what we did was basically said, hey, Zappos theme is deliver happiness. That's their whole tagline.
Right.
So they sponsored a happiness theme. So we integrated them in a much more native way to the actual theme. And then we gave them a little tiny like post roll at the end that said, hey, and it's the truth. You have to pay 99 cents for these themes inside of Magisto. Zappos just gave it to you for free. So Zappos gave you something for free that you'd otherwise have to pay 99 cents for. You engage it. You sort of, as everyone here in the digital world does, we sort of do a little trade where it's like, okay, you'll give me 99 cents of value, but I'll let you put your brand on it, and then I'll push it through to my friends. Every single person had the option to take the brand off. 1 million of them chose not to.
How many chose to take it off?
That's an interesting number. What's funny about that is we don't track that. Straight up.
Smart thinking.
No. Hey, listen,
The button didn't work.
I am not going to sit here and lie to you. But you know what's funny? What's totally funny about that is we got that.
I don't track my expenses. My home budget, it's great. It's all revenue. I have zero
But when you think about it, let me challenge you back. Does it matter if they didn't have a bad experience?
No, it doesn't matter at all.
What I think would be the worst number is, a worst number would be how many people did we force that branding onto that hated it?
Yeah.
Right. And so in a weird way, what we bent ourselves into a pretzel to do is make sure that they had an option not to engage, because that's where you really start. That's where the brand gets blowback. That's where we get blowback. So we don't care how many people took it off. We care that 1 million
That's
people
fair.
left it
That's
on.
fair.
I think
And
the
you-
interesting
you-
part
you
about
kept
what
them
he's saying
happy.
though is, I mean, we're in similar environments. There's a notion of creation, and then there's a notion of discovery, and this aspiration that everybody's in today's society, or a lot of people, sadly enough, want to be discovered as somewhat famous, as a Kardashian syndrome. And you know, their platform, our platform. I mean, people and YouTube, and it's a lot of UGC, but it's a lot of people being creative and sharing creativity and creating channels. You know, Michelle Phan around, you know, who have millions of followers and now are building commerce business around that, you know, about how to put on your makeup or how to dress up and how to be a teen and how to relate, or there's mini shows, mini series. And a lot of these people are just everyday individuals who are building their own brands, who are, but behind that, there's this Jeff Koons, you know, narcissism of everybody kind of wants to be famous in some way or recognized. And you do it on your Facebook to start out with. I mean, we all kind of learned it through Facebook or YouTube early days. It's like, oh yeah, you put a picture, you kind of want people to say they liked it, you know, like, oh, nobody's liking my pictures. Like there's this notion in today's society, particularly 25 and under, that because of proliferation of with Twitter, I mean, it's happening on Twitter all the time. Like how many followers you have, like, and it doesn't matter how really famous you are or aren't, or how, you know, intellectual knowledgeable you are, aren't. It's about this notion of you've got something to say, or you're creative, or you're aspirational, and now there's all these channels for you to be able to build an audience behind that. And there's millions of people, whether it's their wedding or the birth of their kids, or who want to feel some sense of recognition and also want to express creativity, and all these environments support that.
The thing, and I think you'll agree on this too. The thing that's so true. Theoretically, absolutely true, 100%. I'm just talking about something a little bit more like, you know, hard nosed, which is distribution. And Jason was talking about distribution. It's like at the end of the day, UGC has distribution built in.
Yeah.
Right. And so
But
that's
here's the thing. It's a really fair point. Go back to the original conversation about Maker, Awesomeness TV, Full Screen Now, and even you can add Machinima. You take the 4 companies that I just mentioned, that I think all 4 have been mentioned on the panel. All 4 are owned by a major studio now. Time Warner today, Time Warner. I mean, Time Warner is invested in Machinima. ABC or Disney owns now Maker. Full Screen just got bought by Chernin, AT&T, and then the last one, somebody bought it. Who was that? Anyway, but they're all for, and Awesomeness TV got bought by DreamWorks. So why is that important? Because I think we're all struggling. I was laughing because you hit it. We've gone from talking about wedding videos that have 5 views up to professional television shows like House of Cards that it's still not a linear channel, which is still Netflix, up to a regular show like Blackish as a good example. So now you have an ABC show broadcast, you have Netflix, House of Cards, and you have My Wedding. And we have to make sense of how to make money off of all these things. So I think it's really clear what they're going to do. They're going to use these as incubators, and they're going to allow for all these wonderful organic creators to create all their channels. I think Machinima alone has 25,000 channels. Well, you know, if you have 25,000 channels, it's tough to get, the traditional ecosystem is about less supply than demand, right? And that's what drives up your CPMs. Well, it's a whole different game. So the thought process is you got to incubate some talent out of there. So you mentioned Michelle Phan. Michelle Phan, if anyone thinks that Michelle Phan is just programming now, or PewDiePie, if you think that they're just sitting in their home now, programming in front of their camera, it's no longer. PewDiePie made $4 million last year. Michelle Phan is represented, I think, by CAA still. And 3 years ago that was the case. Now these are stars, and they're stars that have just come up in a different way. And so now it's about, okay, how do we mix in premium content and make money off of all of it? I think that is why we can argue all day long on this panel. But there's room for all of us, because quite frankly, we all need our wedding videos up, but we also need to make money. We can't sit in this room, we can't talk to you on this panel if our companies don't take content, create entertaining ideas that resonate with audiences, and then get them to either watch an ad or subscribe to that channel, and not in a YouTube way, but in a paying $5.99 a month way. So at the end of the day, it becomes, how do we engage and build audience around? And so I think that's what this, why I'm enjoying this conversation. But believe me, we're going to argue here because there's no real answers yet. We just have some insights early on.
Miguel?
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of this whole thing, is that if you look at, there's actually a study done of the most influential celebrities among the younger millennials, and 7 out of 10 were YouTube stars. So it's all about the realness and how relatable they are, and I think that's just basically where it's all going. So now, we're talking about the over 50s. It's getting more. Sorry.
I'm bringing my walker the next time I come up here.
It's definitely getting a lot more segmented, but at the same time, I mean, there will be, I hate that term, but it's going to be the new normal where, everyone's going to have a choice. It's all about the preference anyway of the viewer. So I think it's a great thing for younger content makers, for new people who want to get into the biz. The barrier to entry is a lot lower. And
the barrier to success is very high.
It's a little, yeah. I mean, there's a trade-off for sure. It's a lot trickier now because everyone's doing it, but that's showbiz. Entertainment is like that. It's still cutthroat.
How about for your network, when you acquire or produce content, do you think about it in terms of this may be good for online over the top, or this may be good for linear, or this is good for both? And does that factor in at all?
At this point, we don't make the distinction between linear or over the top, because TV is TV, in my opinion. It's just the way it's delivered. Okay. So you can always do like a 30-minute show, and people just want to see it wherever they want to see it. We always leave it to them where they want to view it. That's why we're distributed on multiple platforms. We don't have a mobile app, but we do have mobile web, and it's just as good as a mobile app.
Got it.
I mean, I think it's really interesting. I mean, first of all, I think the YouTube situation, for example, is a great example of saturation of the market. And when Bono has to come out and pretend that he feels sorry for doing a great marketing campaign, we as artists need to break through the crowd, and we want our music heard. And it was so not honest. And but what it did point to is that it's really hard to break through even when you're YouTube. Now they got 26 million of their songs installed, and so they're very happy.
But how did they make any money on that?
not anymore. Now they have to tour, right? All musicians
you
now make money
through
from touring.
But I do think that touring people pay for. I mean, Jay-Z and Beyonce's tour is extremely successful, and it's a really younger audience. And I think that there is still that reality. You would still go see a Marvel movies at the theater. I mean, and they make hundreds, if not billions of dollars. And so, and Twilight, I mean, it's teens and a lot of other people, but
But
if there's
nobody over 50.
Let's get off
the
that
thing-
theme.
but so I still think there's actually a really interesting environment, which is people will pay for high quality long lasting content where people are building relationship through it in a way that has seasons or, legacy to it or future to it. I also think that younger users don't want to pay up front for what is ephemeral, short sessions, short engagement, fickle, instantaneous gratification type of content. And that's why it's subsidized by, advertising. But that pool of amassed, numbers makes it viable. I mean, you do have to aggregate a lot of users to be able to have a viable, growing business, not an app or not a, single channel that is, nice for you, but isn't a business. It takes millions and millions of users to be able to actually have a business, even with high CPMs. But on the other side, I still watch my shows on cable, and I still want to watch my ESPN, and I also want to watch my sports, and I do want to go see the Marvel movie and pay $15, which feels outrageous now. But every time I go to the movie, I feel like it's getting more and more expensive.
It is.
But there is this kind of linear business model where you probably can't play in all these fields and feel that you're gonna get the same buck for your dollar when you're building a $200 to $300 million on movies and then put it on YouTube and you're gonna make up your money. It's never gonna happen. And so there's fragmentation in cost of content and how you go about building your audience and the cost of that audience.
So riffing on that and what other people have said, how do you get people to find your content? Whether you're on TV, whether you're buried in YouTube, whether you're on the front page of, how do you get to the front page of Yahoo? Whatever it is, it sounds to me like the key to all this is making sure people see your content. Or who cares about the content? At least the ads. How do you do it?
Distribution. Yeah,
But it's not just distribution, right? Because you could get buried someplace, especially for online. So what do you guys do? How do you do it?
I mean, there's a combination of a lot of things, right? I mean, first of all, you need to have a relevant product in the right context through the right channel for the right audience. I mean, that circumstance still is reality. Then you do need expertise. I mean, it takes people to market a product, to understand what channels to use, what hashtags, what URL. It's the same thing, just on different environments that's rebundled and repackaged for that vertical and for that engagement type, or for the banner type, or if it's Twitter for the 140 characters. But it takes money. And if you're a big production company or movie studio, whatever, you have the money. If not, then you just need really smart, savvy, viral marketing, social people. You need great content, and you need followers. And I mean, on Pinterest, if you can get one of the key community person, not the person who's necessarily created the posting, but to move to another post, and to like it or whatever, they can bring tens of thousands of followers with them to also pin that image, right? So there's a whole business behind curating to the community and harnessing the power of community leads. I mean, we hire and we invest in that because you're harnessing, moderators that harness the followers that ultimately drive, your eyeballs.
How does Pixar make money?
So we do, yeah, we're profitable. We never raise money. We have 80 employees. I'm hiring another 20 now. We make money through advertising and in-app purchases. A lot of it through.
So it's in-app ads. I use the app and I see an ad to.
So you see an ad, you'll see an ad. We're releasing native ads in the community side, or a standard banner and interstitial. The app is free, and we're much more focused. We're much more in the notion of the opposite, or the contrarian view of Snapchat, which is we actually want people to spend time to create, to socialize, to be inspired. And so time spent and number of engagements we care a lot about. And then we have the shop, which is, your ability to have different montage, collage, different tools, different capabilities to really amplify your experience. We also do a lot of co-creation, and we enable for people to co-create together. And so whether you're creating stickers or avatars or emojis, or whether you're creating, frames, or, then other people can use those, and ultimately we'll create a marketplace around that. We're not an IM or a Vesco, which is our professional marketplaces, which cater to a very niche audience. We're really about harnessing,
anybody's interest in expressing creativity or having some sense of creativity, which is billions of people on Earth. It's art is one of the oldest,
And so the revenue comes from in-app purchases
And advertising.
And advertising.
Yeah, which is like 90% advertising, basically.
90% advertising.
I think your question really is how do you account for customer acquisition, basically?
How do you do it?
How do you
right?
do it?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think that's a really, I mean, that's what everybody wants to know. And I think
That's why I asked.
And how to drive that cost down.
I mean, I personally is like, if I was just going to take a piece of content out there, I mean, and I didn't have a distribution, and I just didn't, I hadn't sold it to anybody, and I was just like, listen, I'm just going to try and get it out there and try to get as many eyeballs on it. I'd probably allocate about 30% of the budget to that, just customer acquisition.
I would think more, but okay.
Yeah, 30 to 35% probably.
I mean, Jason, actually, I want to ask you this question. Do you think, like, looking at like the Maker acquisition into Disney, it seems to me that that's the petri dish that I'm looking at now. Like, how does a big company? Because the whole topic here is okay. We're talking about cord cutting, right? But when you really look at where it comes together, if the Maker acquisition is just a flop or a loss leader, and they're not able to get those synergies there should be channels for, Star Wars, fanfic stuff. And there should be channels. They should be able, and again, it's easy from the outside looking in to say what they should do, but there should be so many potential synergies about cross-marketing. They should be able to, nobody's better at handling and cultivating talent than Disney. They should be able to spin that talent and make it a talent.
100%.
But if it fails, I don't think it's a good, what do you think?
No, I completely, sorry, I failed. I completely agree with that. I think that there is, I think it's a very interesting thing that you're because I think that's across the board. I think it's not just that Maker that's kind of happening. I think it's a little bit different over at Awesomeness and Full Screen and places like that. But I think Makers has an uphill battle, in terms of. But I agree.
What's the uphill battle and why?
Well, I think that there's I gotta be kind of careful because I make content for it.
Moving on.
I just think that I don't think that they've necessarily figured out how to I guess
should we move on? We can move on. I don't want to make you look bad here.
What I will say is that I think that they need to figure out how to make a business out of it. And to not make it just solely on YouTube, I think is the idea.
Right.
I think that's what Disney wants to do.
You know what I mean? And I think that the problem is that because there is just so much overhead in these companies. You go to their offices. It's beautiful. It's right down here. It's like, it's unbelievable. And the thing about it is that, I would hate to be a CFO in that company, just looking at the bottom line going, well, you'd be really excited because you sell a company and make a ton of money, but your actual profitability is gotta not be that great.
But see, here's the thing.
You know what I mean? It's just is not that, it can't be. You look at even the big companies that are doing that, the number ones, the number twos, the number threes, the number four, number five. It's all based on the YouTube model, and that is just not a sustainable model.
The only way that this is successful is if they get a certain percentage of their audience off of YouTube.
And you can't do that.
Right.
You can't do that second.
Absolutely.
You have to start it. You have to start. You say, listen, it's like,
Yeah, but here's what they did. So Maker at MIPCOM, what's the first thing they do this week or last week at MIPCOM? They announced their linear channel lineup where they're taking some premium content and their little Maker stars, we'll call them, and they're doing 10-minute blocks of premium programming that they're creating specifically for Disney Channel or Disney XD or I think one other of their channels. Where I'm going is that's going to be their space. The other thing I was going to say,
but it's an uphill battle because it's like you have to. What they're asking for is for all their influencers to basically drive traffic.
Yeah.
In the nuts and bolts of the conversation is like, we're going to have all of our influencers basically just drive traffic to this new platform. So we're guaranteed that this is going to be successful.
Sure.
And I just don't know that. You look at something like, The Scene, Connie Nast's The Scene. That's kind of the same conversation is that, we did really well on YouTube with all of our multi-channel, with our multi-channel network. And, can we do the same amount of numbers on The Scene? And I don't know if that's working out.
But regardless of the details, because there's so many there, I mean, that's the one thing that I would just pose to everybody is that's the pitch. I think the best Petri dish when you're
I agree.
talking about this whole issue of this channel. How do big guys go OTT? How do they get involved with multi-channel? How do they engage users in? It sort of almost spans everybody who's at this table, right? Big content, cable, OTT, user generated, user engaged, creators, makers, all the way down. What's interesting about Maker is it's that one place where it's being done at scale. And there's so many balls to juggle that if they land it, I'm literally going to be the first person on the standing up. I mean, because it's just so much there to do. It's like, where do you even start? And you've got so many challenges.
But I mean, Disney's also, and we see this in the game industry, I mean, Disney's also buying back their users. So there's a bit of like, how do you buy back your P&L that's, migrating somewhere else? Or how do you buy back I mean, they're buying something that they could never build. And a part of that audience is either theirs that they're losing or theirs to gain. They're buying intellectual capital. I mean, big companies with the Viacoms, all of them have failed miserably at trying to really be social companies. And so, they look at the market, they look at the migration of users, they look at where they need to be more powerful or, where their users are being engaged, how content is being created. And they're like, well, we can sit on the sideline for another, and we can still afford to do it, obviously it's Disney. Or we can make a move, potentially pay a little bit more than we need to or not. But we're buying the largest asset out there. We're going to be able to, funnel our mini celebrities in there, create new mini celebrities that would cost us a lot more money to create. We're going to be able to leverage the tens of millions of users that they've created, that we don't have, or our users that they're stealing. And, there's a bit, when Zynga bought our company, OMG Pop, a bit of that was we cannibalized their entire mobile business, and they were becoming a public company, and they were reporting Q2, and their numbers were going to look like shit. And so our acquisition for hundreds of millions of dollars was actually cheap in relative terms to the value it created back for the company who then raised forecast. There's a lot that goes on in being a public company. And I think that when they're looking at their long-term viability, their audience segmentation, their, where they are, performing and not, where they have holes and where they have lack of expertise, I mean, a lot of, Yahoo spent hundreds of millions buying, intellectual capital, if you will, basically, because they need to reinvigorate their company and find ways to break through where they're getting their ass kicked. And that's the part of what Disney also did. Now, in the long term, will they be able to look back and say, well, that was a really smart acquisition? Was it great? I don't know. I mean, a lot goes into that.
I mean, look at Machinima. I mean, that's not going so well.
Yeah, Machinima is not doing well.
Yeah. Hey, well, listen, I wanted to ask you, you had said that your company never took money and you're profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that come to be? And in terms day one, how did you get users? How did you market? How did people come to know about you, and how did you pull that off? Right? I mean, that's fantastic.
So, to be fair, our founder had built 3 other software companies.
Take money.
But even with that,
and I've been involved in 6 other startups, and actually all of them were funded, whereas he had self-funded all of his. Ultimately, in the mobile world, you like we did withdraw something. I mean, you need, I spent $60,000. We acquired 100 million installs. Right? I mean, you need a viral social.
I want to jump in. So you spend 60. Where did you spend 60,000 on what?
Oh, on mobile, when we did draw something for, as an example, several years back, my budget to release the product based on the app store and the ranking and the algorithm was to spend just enough money to get in the top 25, so you could get the exposure. So then the K factor with the virality factor would kick in, and you bought yourself into the retail environment, if you will, to get the rack exposure, and then. It was a multiplayer game, so hopefully, the game was good enough for other people who want to play it together, and they invited each other. A little bit like WhatsApp, kind of had everybody, load up their address book and pinged everybody else in the world, and suddenly it became de facto, communication. So, but with a small amount of money, because the game was viral, because it was social, because we were allowing for people to create content, share that content, socialize that content, it became, interesting to the celebrities. It became fun. Their followers followed. They got tweeted all over the place. It got YouTube, people were getting married on the platform. It became a social phenomenon. And in some ways, like if you have to be socially relevant. And that's one of the challenges in today's day and age is, for example, one of the things I'm looking at right now is working with William Morris and CCA. Like we have to be, as our company, even that we've gotten 50 million monthly active users and, almost 200 million installs organically, we're not socially relevant enough. And if we're really going to go to 1 billion users worldwide, we have to become more socially relevant. And you have to do that with brands, with IP, with celebrities, and you have to be a part of what everybody's talking about, that 30%.
And does that mean, and again, I just don't mean this in joke, so is that the millennials you're going for? I mean, the over 50s, to use that one, are they socially relevant? I mean, are you going to reach them?
So a lot of what, has made us successful is that people are sharing that content, right? So you create something, you edit an image, you create a drawing, and the product is simple enough to use that a lot of people can do a lot of things, and it grows on you and you learn how to do more things. And you're sharing it with people you know or people you care about, or you're sharing it into a social feed, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. The discovery component of that is the fact that you're propagating your asset, and it looks different, it feels different, it's personalized, and people comment, share, socialize that, like it, want to know where you did that. And so the word of mouth in itself is derived off of that we've enabled people to express creativity. And that's been very powerful. It's very powerful in video, which is something we're going to engage in. Vine has been very successful at that. Instagram piggyback right on Facebook, but ultimately this notion of proliferating images and people discovering that, and Twitter. I mean, I think we live in a world that the notion that you can kind of tie billions of people together through an application that allows for people to share, discover, be inspired, learn, is a new world. And a lot of those things are, real time, or they're user generated, they're aspirational, and there's so many subgroups and sub worlds and verticals to go after and to cater to and to nurture around the world, not just the mass market media, but people who love, if you look at Pinterest, right, 70 million monthly active users now, a lot of the stuff in there is created by a very few, but when you see how people love to hoard and just really kind of focus on my Nike shoes, and everybody's got, the whole Nike shoe thing, it's fascinating. But people have passions, and there's more to life than Snapchat. There's a lot more to teenagers, to adults. And that's where I think that actually we are much more mass market than a Snapchat. We have a bigger potential audience because creativity or art or discovery or being in an art gallery is for anybody. And that's, I think, where value gets created when, you're about more than just a 10-second ephemeral world.
But what's funny about you asked a question about demo. People are always like, oh yeah, but you guys are a teenagers app. Less than 20% of our community is under 18.
What's
our core
majority,
demo is a mother who's married with a kid, at least one child.
Right.
That's our core demographic. And then after that is fathers married with a kid. And then after that is a spike in teenagers. It's really fascinating. And so, people talk about the millennial, but I think, Brian Solis, if anybody follows Brian Solis, he says it, but he talks about something different called the C generation, which is people who've basically decided to engage in a sort of a different lifestyle where you're staying connected, and the connected generation, which C is for connected, I know people, my grandma towards the, God bless her, she just passed, but towards the end, she actually completely cut the cord. She stopped watching Fox News and she lived on Facebook.
And then she died. So look what happened.
Was it watching Fox News that killed her?
But I will tell you what, her quality of life, I think, dramatically increased when she became a part of the C generation, because she discovered, once she discovered that there was a place where all her grandkids were talking to each other and posting photos of each other, you couldn't keep her away. Right. So anyways, I just wanted to say, is there overlap between millennials and C generation? Yes, there's a huge overlap. But do you see people over 50 deciding to be part of the C generation? Absolutely.
Yes.
You do. Yes.
Yeah, but you don't see them first, right? I mean, where we are is that, they're going to be late majority. Every technology, whether, go back to the cassette, go back to DVD, and, going from VHS to DVD, and a lot of us remember this. So let's be very clear, we're close to that 50, but where I'm going with it is, quite frankly, younger demographics always move the technology needle. You get the very high income folks that love to have every new, they want to be in Laserdisc and everything. But then when you really get beyond to real numbers to scale, it has to be a demo that has, one, time to learn it, two, the ability to care and use it socially. Most demos of older generation don't like their information being that social. They don't like posting their information. Most. just look at statistics and you'll see. But I'll finish my point. The point is just you start where the big market is, and that's where investors are starting. You know, Machinima is in Maker and these other. They're not starting with, okay, this is a site for your grandparents. This is a start. You know, Awesomeness TV. This is a site for your 14-year-old daughter that will look at her YouTube stars and her discovery of new artists. And then you drive behaviorally from there because one, they have time, they want to explore, they're very open to exploring, and then it builds out from there. Those that perform. So I would say that, like, you know, and let's be clear, advertisers, you know, what's the advertising? It's 18 to 49. Why? It's not because, you know, people that have the most money are over 50. But the fact is people that change brands, cost of subscriber, cost of acquisition, is younger. It's easier to get them and then stay loyal to that brand over a lifetime. So that's the challenge we're all facing.
Hey, Miguel, how do you guys, sorry, didn't mean to wake you up. How do you do marketing to the consumers, or do you just focus on trying to market to the pay TV operators?
We actually market to the consumers directly. And, you know, we've realized that social media is I mean, it's so obvious why social media is the easiest way to get them, but at the same time, it's super challenging because since it's grown over the past few years, people are what we realize, people are a lot more selective in who they follow and who they want to engage with.
So do you have like a YouTube channel, or what do you do in terms of social media?
Yeah, we also do have a YouTube channel where we release clips of our shows. We have over like 10,000, 14,000 subscribers. But it's definitely not, we know the YouTube is not going to make money for us, and that's what everyone's saying. So, but one thing we did realize, really, going back to what I said about just how difficult it is, and like what you said, the barrier to success is a lot harder now because it's all about aggregating and getting mass audience. So for us, we get a lot of retweets and tweets and likes and all that, but what we also realized was that they don't necessarily follow us back.
Right.
So, so
what good is it really?
Exactly. It's kind of a challenge for us because it's really cracking that code. I mean, and the younger set, they're so much more selective now with who they want to follow, who they like, because social media is so part of their lifestyle that it's reflective of their image among their peers. So it's really tough for new content providers and new networks to crack that code. It's not as easy as say, okay, I'm gonna do this, and also people are a lot more savvy. They don't like spam, so it's yeah. So it's a really tricky industry now.
And your network is Asian American focused. So do you niche market to that audience?
We do. I mean, that's a funny thing. We have that's our positioning and that's our brand. But we also realize we also have a lot of non-Asians who are interested in our content. And I just think that's just how society is going. If you look at the demographics, it's the younger set, they're definitely a lot more colorblind. They're a lot more diverse. They're very accepting of different things. They don't like the status quo. They don't like the mainstream. That's why YouTube is so popular. That's why these younger celebrities, a lot of the big YouTube celebrities are Asian Americans. So,
and what's your core demo?
Our core demo is 18 to 34. It's still the younger set, and mostly Asian Americans, but we do get a lot of non-Asians, which I don't mind. Also, of course, anything.
It's really great.
Yeah.
I missed that box when I was applying to college, non-Asian.
How important is UGC and other online short form content to what you're doing and trying to do and looking to do?
Well, right now it isn't important to us because we're working with cable and satellite companies who have access to content. Although through our guide, which is really a browser, you can get to the internet, so you can get UGC. But because we're basic, really television, except we're delivered over the internet versus a cable or a satellite, we have a lot of the regular content. But we can do all kinds of new content as well. We can do education. We could do homeschooling. There could be a homeschooling channel. There could be a distance learning channel. There could be almost any channel, a Pixar channel. It could be, we can offer unlimited numbers of channels. So we're not really focusing on UGC because we really are focusing on professionally produced content for lots of liability reasons, probably. If you're broadcasting, although we don't broadcast, we narrowcast to you. So we can hyper target an audience down to you, not just to a household or an area.
Actually.
Well, or, our focus groups show that people really like that. If they get content and advertising that's relevant to them, they'll watch it. And they want it. If you're
I
in
just
the,
know,
yeah.
My wife is doing some redecoration in the house. So she gave me a link to look at a couch. So I look at the couch on Crate and Barrel. Wherever I go throughout the rest of the universe on the internet, all I see are ads
For
fucking Crate and Barrel stuff. Who cares? I mean, I'm expecting someone to walk into this room
But it
wearing a
works.
Crate and Barrel shirt, stalking me.
It works.
No, it doesn't work.
No, well, it either works or it annoys you to death. I have the
Yes.
same thing with Grommet. Somebody told me to look at Grommet, which is like user-created products. And I did, and now all I see is Grommet ads wherever I go. And it gets pretty annoying because I'm interested in lots of other things.
Is anybody from Adroll here? Anybody from Adroll? You can raise your hand. We won't kill you.
Yeah.
No,
But,
absolutely.
But retargeting is a problem. But when I've been in front of them as a client, and you see those numbers, and you're like,
It works. If
Believe
it didn't
me,
work, I
when
guess they wouldn't do it,
if
right?
it didn't work, they wouldn't do it. But there's this there. Let's put it this way: I'm glad to be in user content because when your cousin Bernie sends you something, it's just you're either going to watch it, you're not, but you're never angry.
But you trust
Your
it.
cousin Bernie
No, the
for
thing is,
sending
you
it to
trust
you.
it. It's trusted content because it came from your cousin. It
Yeah.
wasn't just content dropped in. And for all of the talk about all of this, YouTube still isn't profitable. It really isn't. If it wasn't the fact that it was housed inside of Google, so the losses get pretty hidden. YouTube has what, $3 billion industry? The advertising world is $270 billion.
Much of the conversation we're having is because of Google and YouTube. And
Because it can sustain losses, right?
we haven't talked about Amazon, but the same thing. If you can build a Prime subscription service and it's for you, it's extra credit, meaning that your business is retail and your job is to bring consumers and bring them back, but then you can build a video entertainment service on the side that doesn't need the same numbers. And
Exactly.
so I would say that they're tremendously influential. We would not be having a lot of the conversation we have without YouTube and Google.
That's right.
But the fact is, when they sell, they'll be worth a whole lot more than what their profitability is right now.
Well, exactly right. It's a changing world. And the most exciting part of it for me is if you can have an influence on change in industry, it's a very exciting time to be involved in this industry. And what we're trying to do is change it and maintain the good stuff and bring the best of the internet to TV. Everybody says, oh, you're Roku. Oh, you're a dongle. Oh, you're this. Oh, you're that. We're not. We're really an MVPD. In essence, a virtual MVPD, or we can allow everybody else to be that. But the good news is there are a lot of good things about the current model. And if you bring the best of the internet to the best of television, you get a really good service that the majority of people want. And the Googles and the Chromecasts, what they're doing is they're bringing television to the internet. And that's a very different thing than bringing the internet to television. And with all the discussions of content, and if you find ways to make new content, new forms of content, interesting forms of content, invigorating forms of content to mass audiences, even if you narrowcast it, you're really changing an industry and doing the world a big favor. And that's a fun place to be right now.
Yeah, I think the one thing that she mentioned, that there's one word that's really key for all of this to work over time. World. This is global. If you look at a lot of the movies being released now, they make more money in China in the first weekend than they do in the US. If you think about the next billion cell phone or the next billion internet connection, they're not in the US. They're in Indonesia, they're in India, they're in Latin America, they're in Africa, they're in Asia. And, a lot of these people want American content and they want, they want the same access to the same quality or the same UGC. And why, I care about my deal with Xiaomi, which is one of the fastest growing cell maker, because I care about, the billion Chinese users and the potential for hundreds of millions of people to use my product there. And dollars are actually moving there from what used to be just purely cost per install CPI or CPC to a CPM model. Brands are entering China now. China is actually somewhat better at being a capitalist country than America is. So it's really about being global. And a lot of these models only work when you reach the scale of being a global entity and having that kind of value upside. I mean, Facebook has 1.2 billion users, 70+ percentile, if not more, are international, right? Twitter, the same, right? So yes, today, the ad revenue per US user is more than any international single user. But when you aggregate all the other ones at large scale, it has tremendous amount of value. And if you're building brand power, if you're building brand relationships and user lifetime relationship, in the world where everything that's coming to market in those markets are not TVs, they're not cable box, they're Wi-Fi, internet, mobile, cell phone, laptops, tablets, you got to be in that game. And those are really viable long-term businesses that you have to look at. It's a global world.
Thank you. I think we can do one or two questions if anyone wants to try to shock our panel. Shock. All right. Well, in that case,
there's one right here.
Oh, there's one.
I'm sorry. Oh, all right. Well, go ahead.
No, that's all right. You don't want to shock the panel.
No, I want to.
Oh, to shock the panel. I'm not intending to shock the panel. But I like when people are talking about the statistics. I get very nervous when I hear that because
You're shaking. I can see that. Nothing. Go ahead.
My grandmother died a long time ago.
I can't do that joke twice anyway.
So I get very nervous when I talk about statistics because I looked into those statistics. Nielsen got a lot of trouble for spouting statistics that were not even true. And the economy is not moved by teens, teenagers, it's moved by people over 30 years old. That's where the money is. So my question is, maybe there's a loss because you're going after the wrong age. Maybe if you concentrated on going after 30 and over, the money will find you. And I'd like you, if you could, think about that.
So first of all, I mean, to your point as well, like we have 35% are 14 to 18, 35% are 18 to 25, and 15 to 20% are 25 to 35. We have a lot of moms as well. I think anybody who's trying to create a montage or an album, whatever else, is, often has family, purpose, or, relationship. So I think that, it is very true. I think, there is some reality behind early adopter and the rate of growth. And if you're thinking about VC-funded companies, they don't care about where the money is. They care about what's growing the business first. So in the world of venture capital, at least, and I'm not going to speak for, the media world, but in the world of venture capital, they're financing growth, not your immediate profitability or viability around against the business model per se. So they care more around, can you get the next 30 million teens to sign up, because the virality and the way they go about adopting and using products feeds on itself and allows for capital efficiencies that don't exist with the 30 plus. Ultimately, you're very likely to come and make money through where the 30 plus is, which is that Snapchat just did its first, campaign, and it was through, Hollywood. It was, about movies. So, I don't think people are saying, well, let's not neglect the 30 plus. I think it's more around when you come up with new devices or new products and they're being adopted in certain ways by, what would be early adopter audience. They tend to be younger in age because of how that proliferates and makes it, at least on a growth standpoint, more viable. But in terms of long-term businesses, nobody can make money, relevant money, without aggregated scale across all audience segments.
It's tied up.
Yeah.
You made this point. I was just going to toss it to you. Like this tied up capital, where it's like you've already made your lifestyle decisions.
Yeah, it's cost of sub and acquisition, and I apologize because I know you were maybe targeting to me a little bit. But let me just say this: I spent time. One of the proudest, I've been around 20 years now, and one of the most exciting projects I worked on was a real small project, monetization-wise. It was called launching the James Brown channel with his estate, and direct-to-consumer YouTube partner channel, and it was awesome, right? But when we started pulling out the numbers, right, who his audience was, are they, what platforms are they actually viewing from? How can we advertise to them? And when we start cross-indexing, the only way I make the James Brown channel work, even though I loved everything about what we were doing, was if I got younger consumers to rediscover who James Brown was. Because unless I can get on TV, At the time. Now, in 5 years, it'll be different. 5 years after the platforms are grown, after, we get everybody on some of these platforms, it will absolutely change. But right now, early adopter and sort of these new behavioral shifts, usually it's younger folks that are sort of driving that change.
I'm going to, we're,
Thank you.
I don't want,
Hi, thanks for staying, guys. I recently cut the cable about 5-6 months ago, and I haven't missed it.
remember what happened?
But I may die though soon because basketball is starting. I can't watch it. I want to know about, we're talking about over-the-top experiences and removing barriers. Can something like that happen with sports content where you're getting an a la carte subscription just for that? I think highly identified sports consumers are all about the second, third, and fourth screens. They're doing fantasy football, they're live tweeting, there's March Madness practice, we need to watch, so there's multiple things going on. Can something like that happen? Because I'm willing to pay $25.99 a month for just the NBA League Pass that's a cross-platform digital thing in addition to maybe getting cable. I won't get cable yet, but I know that there's other people that will because they have families that probably don't want to watch the game. They would rather watch something.
Anybody?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah, right, it's
Because, yes, league specific. For example, yes, because we can offer a channel that'll be Major League Baseball, the NBA, hockey. NFL is harder because I was on the board of DirecTV when we did that Sunday ticket deal. So it's pretty locked in. But yes, they all offer on the internet single source packages. There's MLB, there's NBA. You could pay for the whole thing. And since it's over the top, that's an internet package, so they can offer the internet packages through a channel.
They're going to make more money.
Yes.
In a sentence, I think
Yes.
they're going to make more money unbundling
Yes.
for those types of things. I mean, one of the things that's really astounding is I think one of the things that we're learning about this, the more and more things become pre-recorded and you can get it anywhere, the more we realize that live events have something truly special. Who gives a shit if you saw something even 30 minutes after the buzzer? It's like, it's old now, right? I want to share that event and I'm willing to pay a ton of money.
Premium, right.
And that premium to be part of that Met HD, I think it's been, I do Met HD, I'm the nerdiest, dumbest guy, but when you see live events in HD in a theater and you know that it's happening on London's West End, you know that it's happening live at the Met right now, there's something about human psychology that's real special. I think in those particular cases, not only are they going to unbundle, but I think they're going to make bundles of money by unbundling.
Yes,
the
exactly.
two big misses right now, live sports
Yes.
and live news, right? Live local, live national, on some of these platforms. And that said, live news is a lot easier to get to. You can get more all rights, all clear digital news content. You're starting to see that ABC just launched an ABC News app that is different than their Watch app, which is interesting because they're packaging news on, and they actually have a live stream on that. But it's a lag. On sports, we know it will be an early adopter. It will move. The problem with sports, quite frankly, is that ESPN is tied up. They've locked down, and most of the networks have signed on to through 2020. So what you're going to do is you're going to see some of these things roll out over time because contractually, yeah, they're going to have to be bundled for a while. And by the way, I believe the number is 2020 or 2022. I can't remember exactly. But what will happen is it's going to allow for the maturity of this market to take place. And then what will happen at that point, you'll see a lot of unbundled deals. But you're seeing it around the edges now.
Yeah. And CBS, if you take CBS, for example, there's a reason CBS was first. CBS, other than Showtime, has very few cable channels.
Right.
They rely very heavily for profitability on their owned and operated on affiliates, right? Local affiliates. Those are ultimately going to go away, right? And so CBS is in real trouble. I give them a lot of credit because they're looking forward. It's the innovator's dilemma, right? It's very hard to corrupt yourself or innovate yourself. But they really had to do it. There are reasons these are starting to happen, and I think you're going to see them accelerate.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time tonight.